My request to you is to go ahead and mute yourselves. So that way we're not getting your background information, and we'll start the program now. Okay, so my name is Laura Milner. I'm the chair of Voter Services, and I'm the moderator. I'm the introduction person for today's lunch, essentially. And so it's my pleasure to welcome Emily Jacobs and Liz Weiss, both from Braver Angels. And let me tell you a little bit about both of them. Emily works at the National Association for Interpretation, where she oversees certification and training programs for naturalists, park rangers, museum educators, and staff at zoos and aquaria. After the 2016 election, she woke up to a country she didn't recognize. Wanting to more fully understand the other side and seeking to find humanity in all, she started a civil conversations group in Ellensburg and eventually found Braver Angels. Aside from this work, Emily loves to be outside, moonlighting as a naturalist snowshoe guide for the Forest Service, road cycling as much as she can tolerate in her Ellensburg winds, and having a blast with her spouse and four-legged friends. Liz Weiss. Liz grew up in Evanston, Illinois, went to MIT and then to Harvard Medical School. She did her family medical residency at University of California at San Diego, and then moved to Cle Elum in 1981 with her husband, Jock Young, and her 3-month-old son. She worked as a family doctor there in Cle Elum until retiring in June 2019. She was the first female doctor in Kittitas County. We had a role reversed, but otherwise stereotypical convention American family, as her husband retired from computer programming to stay home with the 3 kids while Liz worked. Some of her hobbies and interests include hiking, crafts, tennis, gardening, travel until COVID, reading, and theater. She also did some volunteer teaching family medicine residents at the Community Health of Central Washington, and she helps at the Hope Source Food Bank in Cle Elum. She's participated in several of Catherine Murphy's Cultivating Civic Conversations courses, and she's had stimulating involvement with the Kittitas Progressive Readers, a book and study club that formed in 2020 as an offshoot of the County Democratic Party. So with no further ado, I turn it over to Emily and Liz to tell us all about Braver Angels.
All right. Well, I know Liz is going to get us started, but I want to thank Laura and thank you all for the invitation. Laura is also been to many of our Alliance meetings, so you can feel free to chime in and share a little bit about your experience if you'd like to as well.
Thank you.
So, Liz, I'll share my screen and I will turn it over to you.
All right. So, and I want to reiterate the thanks to League of Women Voters for inviting us here, and to all of you for the attention that you're giving us. So
we should point out that Liz is also a member of the League of Women Voters.
I am. Everything is connected. All right. So I got involved with Braver Angels just about a year ago. January 6th happened, and it really scared me in terms of the potential to end up in civil war. And I was doing a Catherine Murphy Cultivating Civic Conversations thing that was centered on race, I think was the one at that time. And she offered an ad hoc extra session for people to process January 6th, which I went to, and so did Emily. And that's where I first heard of Braver Angels. And so I took a workshop in February and joined the Alliance, and here I am. So the underlying goal of Braver Angels, like why this helps me, is to depolarize American politics, to reduce affective polarization, which means not just the like, do you follow Democratic or Republican policies, but how you feel about people on the other side, whether you're seeing the people on the other side as immoral, contemptible people. And, you know, it was like, okay, there's 70 million people, we're told as of then, who believe the big lie, but I can't imagine that 70 million Americans are basically not wanting some of the same things I want: a healthy society and food on the table and shelter and all of that stuff. So Braver Angels was a way to feel like I'm doing something to reduce that enmity that might end up in civil war. On to you, Emily.
All right, thanks, Liz. So just to add on to Laura's introduction, so like so many of you, my initial involvement with Braver Angels was sort of twofold. So I did start a civil conversation discussion group in Ellensburg, and with my involvement with Braver Angels, I am one of what we call a blue co-chair. So I lean towards liberal, and it took a long time for me in Ellensburg to find Reds who would be willing to sit down. I reached out, for example, to the Kittitas County Republicans, and that didn't go very far. So it took a while for us to be able to find individuals who would want to get together. We had a really thriving organization and conversation for about a year. But one of the challenges, as Laura alluded to earlier, is that my regular day job involves a lot of travel. And so I would be out of the town when we were going to meet. And I couldn't set my travel schedule for work based on when the civil conversation group was meeting. And so eventually what I started realizing was that if I wasn't there, they didn't meet, even though I was doing my best to try to grow their own skill sets beyond me being the quote unquote leader. So I had heard of what was then called Better Angels. And so I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to give a little bit of a history. But that is really where I went, now, wow, this is an organization that really has their materials together and seems to be doing very similar work. So let me just start with a little bit of where the name itself comes from. So we initially used to be called Better Angels, and it comes from Abraham Lincoln's inaugural address. So when he became president, he knew that the country was going to split. The South had pretty much said that. And so if you look at the paragraph that I shared, he says at the very kind of end of his speech, that basically when again touched, as surely they will be by the better angels of our nature. And so he was really trying to appeal to the better side of ourselves to stay unified as a country. Well, we know how that all worked out. And as Liz mentioned, there certainly have been some scary conversations around, are we at the cusp of a civil war again? And so inspired by that work, and with the wake of the 2016 election, is really when Braver Angels got started. So it started with a simple idea in Ohio. What if we found Trump supporters and Clinton supporters and put them in a room together? Could we have a civil conversation? And so they hosted what now is called our Red Blue workshop. And it turned out it was okay. No one died as a result of this meeting. So they considered that great success. And so they ended up growing as an organization. You can kind of see this timeline in terms of, doing a bus tour and kind of initially very grassroots kind of organization. When I got involved with Better Angels back in 2018, it was still pretty small. And to be honest, I think one of the biggest benefits to the organization has been the pandemic. You're going to hear later from Liz about the workshops that we do. And now suddenly, instead of all of us in Ellensburg, because I know most of you, and I know most of you are in Ellensburg or in Cle Elum, we don't have to drive to Spokane or Seattle to a workshop. Like the first time I went to a Red Blue, I drove to Seattle. Now I can sit at my house in Ellensburg and attend the Red Blue workshop over Zoom. So even though there's a lot of things that the virtual landscape feels like it kills us inside being on Zoom all the time, it actually has really caused explosive growth within the organization. January 6th certainly helped as well. But you can see that it's really rising. And as Liz is going to talk later, what's exciting is this organization is now even going to Capitol Hill. The other thing I'll say about this organization, which I find intriguing as all get out, is that it actually was founded by marriage counselors. And so using some of the same techniques, rather than talking to two spouses who no longer see eye to eye on certain things, they're using that same ideology or philosophy, I should say, to talk with Reds and Blues. So, and of course, I think y'all know that, but when we're talking about Reds, we're talking about more conservative leaning, and Blues more liberal leaning. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Braver Angels themselves with just a short video that is a little bit of an introduction to who we are.
Politics has always been a passionate subject, and we've always had deep political disagreements. That's the way it's supposed to be. But we've gotten to the point where people can't even talk to one another. Americans no longer see their political opponents as simply wrong or misguided. They see them as bad people whose ways of thinking are dangerous and incomprehensible. They see them as enemies. This level of rancor and mistrust threatens our democracy, and it makes it harder for us to move forward as a nation, regardless of who the president is.
The fact that we live in what feels like, some people call it, a cold civil war, that takes a toll on all of us.
We've been excommunicated from a lot of our friends in the last couple of years, and it makes me sad.
This is one organization that's doing a lot to kind of overcome that and get people back to where we were, which is neighbors, friends, communities.
Better Angels was born in response to the crisis of polarization. We are truly bipartisan. From our staff to our funding to our board of directors, we're evenly split, half conservative, half liberal. Everything we do comes from the bottom up. We're an almost entirely volunteer-led operation. We wanted to see put together a group of folks who'd voted for Trump and a group of folks who voted for Clinton and get them in a room to see how can we bring people together to not get them to agree or to come to the middle, but to maybe change how they think about weather.
You know, it's funny, I think a lot of people will look at 2020 and argue that this is the least hospitable time for the work that we're doing, because we know that our politics has a tendency to bring out the worst in us. But it also is an extraordinary opportunity because this deeper project of civic renewal, of healing the relationships that exist between the American people across the cultural and political divides, the importance of this project is going to become clearer and clearer to people over the course of this election.
A lot of people are going to have to let off steam. I really believe that it's better to do it in a productive way, where they see each other as fellow human beings. It inspires me. Every Better Angels debate I take part in.
When you're there in person and you have to face the person you're talking to, we remember suddenly the rules of civil discourse and kind of how we should act in society. It's something that really distinguishes this form of conversation and debate.
It's all well and good to talk about civility and being nice to people, but the missing ingredient is courage.
In 2020, we also need courage. The courage that it takes to have a difficult conversation, to put yourself out there.
What we've been saying is that this year, it's not enough to call in our better angels. We have to call in our braver angels.
The name Braver Angels captures the evolving spirit of Better Angels. We have to be willing to summon the courage to see the best in the other side, see the best in our fellow Americans.
Courage means becoming a leader in your own community who's standing up for America, not just for your political party or your tribe or folks with whom you share an identity, but standing up for something larger that we can all believe in. If we can create a large enough movement that is clamoring for a more courageous style of politics, we can change the incentives.
That's something that can only be achieved through what we call patriotic empathy, this idea that your love for your country is demonstrated in your love for your fellow American. As Braver Angels, we're able to lean into that with courage and boldness.
It will make you feel like we can serve this place and our country can serve humanity in a way that is actually beautiful and actually does us justice.
This is not a left-wing movement, this is not a right-wing movement, but it is indeed an American movement. We still have it in us to be champions for what is right and what is graceful and what is decent here in the United States.
In this time of public health crisis, Braver Angels is taking its work online, hosting weekly online debates, virtual book discussions, concerts, skills training courses, and soon, one-on-one red-blue conversations. As Americans stay home to protect their fellow citizens, Braver Angels is bringing us together in new ways and helping us find the courage needed to transcend our partisan differences and overcome this challenge. Go to braverangels.org, sign up to join our email list, and at the end of the day, try to treat each other with respect, empathy, and find the courage needed to talk to people, even if, and perhaps especially when, you don't agree with them.
All right, so I was teasing Liz that I might get overclamped with that video. I'm really inspired by the work that Braver Angels does. So hopefully it's not going to play the video again, Liz, but I'm going to turn it over. Oh, it wants to. Shoot, hold on. There we go.